Hi, Marcelle. How are you?
Hey Martin, I'm good. How are you doing?
Really well. Really good to reconnect.
Yes, good to see you.
Thank you. As part of this basically value series that we're doing, we would love just to have an overall chat with you about your experience as a value leader across a number of different organizations. Before we start, it would be great if you could just introduce yourself, a little bit of background on you, and basically your career history to date.
Sure. Hi everyone. Marchelle Varamini. I now lead the value practice at Boomi, and this is my third stint at what I would consider now a value transformation journey for, SaaS and technology sales. Prior to this, I was with Amplitude, a product analytics solution, and then prior to that, I was with SAP, all kind of largely centered on the evolution of where value starts to show up or started showing up in selling and servicing of the customer motions. So now I'm here at Boomi getting to do it again. And I currently live outside of the Seattle area and travel often and do some really fun things outside of value as well.
Absolutely. All valuable things, though, I'm sure.
All valuable. Yes, absolutely.
So in one of our conversations, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago, you used a term that really resonated with me that I'd only heard you say, which is the concept of value experience. And I thought it was a really insightful term with a lot of weight to it. I'd love just to get your thoughts on what does that mean and how do you define it and how it how you bring it into the organizations where you work.
Yeah. So I'm glad that it resonated with you, first of all, Martin, because it's something that I have been trying to pioneer within the space. So if I was to refer back to my prior experience with SAP, it was very much supporting the Concur line of business. And back a large handful of years ago, there was a realization for me that the focus would eventually turn to the retention and the ongoing life cycle of the customer. And I learned a ton through my partnerships in that business about what it meant to really drive, customer retention. And as my value, I guess, mindset started to mature and shift, I realized that it was actually value selling or the idea of value engineering was not enough. And that there was a necessity to pull value through and have it actually very much live inside the customer experience with your product, right? And so what ended up transpiring through that, I guess, couple of years of just kind of pressure testing ideas and whatnot was this idea that everybody in the business that touches the customer or produces content that the customer reads or services the customer because there are issues in the system or whatever. Everybody has a responsibility to bring what I call value experience to the customer or the prospect. And that was kind of the initial foundation to how you connected that value chain that a lot of people talk about. You can design a value motion in a business, but unless every role in go to market, through to product, through to professional services, unless those functions all kind of embody that value core, you will still see breakage in that chain. And so I coined it value experience, meaning sales has their VX, marketing has theirs, variations of roles within the marketing function have their piece of that, into customer success, professional services, partners, the list goes on, product, even. Everybody has a responsibility to bring value to the customer, and that's their own VX in the context of their job.
And I guess everybody could effectively have a KPI associated with that that drives towards that same value, ultimate value KPI.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every role that in the business is measured on the effectiveness of serving the customer or, selling to the customer or whatever that KPI is. Every role is measured in that, and it's all dependent on that value hub, right? Like, so the other way I describe it is kind of a hub and spoke model, the hub being the value of your solution. the hub being, the collective message or the collective vision there. Now, I'm a firm believer that a value function or a value office doesn't own that for the company. We're subject matter experts in it. We have largely the business acumen that drives, the connective tissue to the business outcomes that we talk to customers about. We're really good at that, but we don't own that hub. Sorry, my alarm is going off. So we don't own that. But the business itself anchors on it. So it's like the spokes from that are the value experiences of the functions in go to market or anyone else in the business. And everybody just drafts off of that value core.
It's almost
So
analogous.
that's kind of the
Sorry.
premise. No, no, no. That's just the premise of it is that VX is if everybody embodies the idea that they have a VX as part of their function in the business, then that customer value chain never breaks.
I love it that it's a bit like having your North Star metric, right? We all have KPIs, we all have metrics, but if you could establish what is your VX, I love the term VX, your VX metric, that one North Star that is ultimately the value that all the other metrics of value lead into, that that it's kind of your the ultimate in alignment across the organization. Matthew,
Which largely, I mean, I would real quick on that. I mean, that's where the market shift is really showing up, right? That it's all about net retention now. So prior in
100%.
legacy value, like what I consider legacy value motions, everything was about this expected value, this engineered approach to the potential of what success could look like for the customer. But everything has shifted into, I mean, competitive landscape, all of the pressures, everybody in cloud now, it's a no-brainer. Any customer could unplug you and plug someone in just like you, right? And so if we aren't anchored on net retention now, which requires full go-to-market participation, full VX in the go-to-market motions, then that North Star is at risk. And so that's where I tell all my sellers, or I work, as I coach through deals and whatnot. I mean, the whole premise of value now is to sell through the renewal. You're not selling just to get that initial contract. You're selling actually through the renewal. You should make that renewal a non-event. And that's when your value experience motions are very, like, that's when you know that things are solid.
And your profitability on every customer just goes like this, right? Because you can, yeah,
Yep, exactly. It leaves room, it opens up that door for the expansion, opportunities. I would say largely most SaaS products are looking for some sort of platform play, looking to solve more than just a single business challenge for a customer. It so that if you pull that through, those use cases and that exploration of other areas of impact become warranted. First of all, the customer is willing to have that conversation because you're already bringing value to the table and proving it with them, which requires a full coordinated motion from that pre-sale experience to the post. And that's VX in all its glory.
where do you find when you come into a new organization and you want to basically introduce this whole VX motion, which is kind of like that revenue bow tie, if you're not familiar with winning by design, the pre-sale all the way through. Where do you find the most difficult phase to really introduce this? Because I feel like you do hear a lot, obviously pre-sales and sales, it's all value engineering, value management has always been very, very much focused on that. And then there's a point in that sale where there is a handoff or some sort of a movement of that deal from the rep to customer success or whatever the role name is,
Right? Everything in the post.
everything in the post, where the impact is really need to be demonstrated. Where along that cycle do you find it most challenging to introduce VX and make it consistent?
Gosh. Well, right now, the temperature is pretty high within the CS function, right? I think we're all witnessing a change, a shift in what I would consider kind of the job description of customer success. I think the hardest point, entry point to what, to your question is is helping the CS organization reorient themselves around what their role really is now. And I think, I mean, we all see it everywhere. Everybody's talking about this shift in customer success and the responsibilities, the North Star for them. And so I guess short answer is I think the hardest entry point right now is customer success because it's mandatory that that role shifts from being account management like ticket management coordinator, that kind of thing, through to actual success orientation. And if the business acumen is lacking or the sales motion up until this point has always been very feature oriented, then it's a very big hill to climb on the CS front. And so, oh, go ahead.
Should they have a quota? Should they be accountable for some retention?
I agree. I do think so. Yes, I think in fact there should be a blended responsibility. Most organizations now sit with an expansion type sales motion, right? And so I do believe that the expansion AM or AE and the CS quota, if you want to call it that, should be aligned so that they're working towards the same objectives. The use case, the I've always said customer success leaders or customer success managers are often people who can act as moles inside the organization, not in a negative way, but they are often the ones that, the EB or whomever else in the customer trusts, right? It's like that connection point. And so, you know, that needs to blend with the way that the account manager or the AE is actually trying to approach white space targeting. And your expansion revenue will suffer if you're not really putting a CS in a position to be able to go in and have a value experience type role in their job. So
And within the different roles now of value experience, obviously we talked about sales and post sales. We come across with a lot of the companies we work with that within them that the product marketer role also has a role to play in the value experience, either through the insights captured, but yeah, it's an interesting component in that value experience. Where do you see product marketing really fitting in?
product marketing should be well, so in relation to the value role or the value office that I lead, I believe the product marketer is like my best friend. The so the other kind of philosophy I live by or operate with is like top value belongs top of funnel through life cycle. So anything related to top of funnel or product messaging of any kind should adapt and should kind of bring that value driver framework into focus so that you can lead to the product intention in the context of business reasons for it. If you don't if you don't put that as the why how what across a marketing strategy, like you're going to be stuck in feature function land and you're going to be stuck in not being able to pull through business, you know, the business objectives that then of course pull through into life cycle to even measure to value realize in the first place. So it's all codependent, it's all connected. Product marketing, it's like the first when I go into a new organization or when I'm trying to kind of activate value experience as a concept, product marketing is absolutely one of my target spokes. As I said earlier, that is a key function in getting this kind of really landed and stood up so that top of funnel and anything that drafts off of their content that they build is all within the same context of the value of the solution.
It makes sense, right? Because I think there's also there's so many different directions we can take there. Product marketing has their hands on the pulse of what's going on, the insights, the data, how customers are engaging with solution, and therefore how the messaging of the solution needs to come out. They're also in charge sometimes of maybe converting those into the historical ROI calculators on a website that nobody really likes, but they just somehow need to find themselves on a website. That's a whole other topic of discussion. But we have found in many companies that the role has also been sitting, or at least partnering with the value role to really align on, what is the value story being told. Now, it was interesting in today's, so today I mentioned earlier that we had our one of our value breakfast roundtables at Databricks today, and one of the topics of discussion was a lot of these companies, they innovate so quickly, right? The product roadmap is just continuously developing at a faster rate, especially as AI now starts to really be rolled out and demonstrate the let's say the paradigm shifting level of value. How does value catch up? How does value keep up with the product innovation at a pace where you can communicate the impact of a product that is innovating, almost faster than you can keep up with? Maybe I'm over exaggerating it, but
So no. So I think where you're going is you're actually pointing to the VX responsibility of the product teams. So early on in my career, I think this was actually a gap in my first kind of vision, was that new product introduction or any process to go to market with something we were missing. So to your point, the
mm,
value perspective, whether that's something that my team feeds in or participates in, or it's something that the product teams themselves can actually deliver on. If value, the why, is not at the forefront of the reason for developing said product or innovating in a certain direction because your customer base needs it or whatever, then by definition, the product team is missing their VX requirement in that development
right.
process.
Yeah, because it's detached, right?
It's attached, right? So if, you know, let's just be very basic in in an example. If a new product wants to add a feature to, I don't know, some sort of table format or notes function or sharing or, collaboration tooling, if they're not literally looking at that and saying, why would our customers use this? Why would they buy this? Why is it important to our customer? What business problem does it solve for them? And also take it a step further and say, do they make money on it? Do they save money with it? Or do they mitigate any risk because of it? If we can't answer those questions, then I really recommend a product team really step back and say, should we be actually bringing this product to market?
It's a
Because
nice challenge. Yeah.
it's, yeah, I mean, and I know that that sounds really, it could sound elementary just the way I described it, but it's also a very complicated concept. It's hard to say, yes, we can't move forward with our sprint. We're not going to go code this. We're not going to develop this unless we can answer these questions. Sometimes we know product teams get really excited. They're like, yep, we know we need to put this in. We'll figure out the value later. Well, you know what that does is that puts so much more pressure on the product marketing team to try to curate some sort of value point of view around that feature or module or whatever has been developed. And then it creates a whole downstream impact of a value gap and the chain breaks. So it again, back to what I said earlier, it's all connected, and you're pointing to a product team's issue with bringing value into their role as well.
Yeah, these are all the spokes of that hub, right? I mean, even pricing. I mean, I can only imagine how does pricing evolve as that the value and the product evolve. I mean, we're seeing again at Databricks, they have a consumption-based model, right? There's the traditional seat model, consumption-based, and there's different variances. But I would imagine that in a well matured value experience model, pricing is the other side of the coin of value, right? Because ultimately, the more symbiosis those have, the best exchange of value there is, right?
A couple of times, in fact, in my career, I've been attached to a pricing strategy project or whatever. And we all know, I think it's safe to say, obviously the more value, to your point, symbiotic, the more value represented to the customer, the higher the price tag, the lower the the lower the discount, the longer the contract term, those variables become more positive and in favor of the the selling organization, right? And so by definition, yeah, a pricing and packaging team or strategy also needs to have value orientation, because the way that they bundle the package, or the bundle the products or whatever, that they have to be able to connect back to the why for that product solution set, so that they can charge the premium price tag that they want to charge. Otherwise, you're now, if that chain breaks too, then you're at a commodity level, and it's a race to the bottom on price. So, that value orientation is actually, I sometimes consider it like a protection layer for negotiation. And you've got the anchors to go back to your procurement or whomever is kind of balking at that negotiation or the contract, and they're saying, well, why are we paying this much? Or why is it the price that it is? You've got your defensible value narrative that is fully baked, because product has the VX that they brought to the table, pricing and packaging is put it together in the best way possible, and you've got what I would consider like the value expected sitting on the table as well, to say, look, this is what you're going to give to get. And so it's all codependent there too.
Look, I mean, we could talk for hours about the value experience, because it's a unique concept, but it sounds so obvious when you talk about it, because it sounds so natural that it should be at the center. But it was the first time I'd ever heard of it when you shared it with me. Now, when you come into a new company, which you just recently have, is there a mandate? Like they say, Marchelle, come in, do X, Y, Z with like, do you come in saying, right, I'm going to introduce the value experience, and there's a project with they're going to focus on creating alignment across these spokes?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this is the way I believe value should be oriented in the business. So, yes, when moving into this role, that was the premise. It was, okay, this is what I can bring to the business, I believe. This is the vision. There's no project plan that's like static. I can't copy paste into the next organization, because the roles are different, or the functions are the same, but the people are different, and the maturity and the complexity is, it's all different. So you have to come in, you have to assess, which I'm in that stage right now. It's really fun. Um, and now the project plan is starting to formulate, right? So enablement is another spoke that is super dependent on. And so now I'm starting to get those relationships built, starting to kind of feel out where things are from a maturity standpoint. Where are my sellers at? Where are my pre-sales? Or, where are my SCs at? Where is CS at? And now we're starting to identify the first things first is, what's the foundational project that needs to be, or the foundational layer that needs to be built, which at this point it's a reframe in the value driver category. Where, what does it mean to kind of reframe Boomi in the world right now? And like, there's so much exciting potential coming out of Boomi now, and like with AI and with all of the new with all the innovation, that we get to reframe this a little bit. And now we establish that, and then everybody starts to draft. So I'm in that stage now. It's not always, like I said, it's not always a copy paste across an organization. Some of it, I will say, the last thing on that point though, is that some of it can be pretty static. It's the same functions largely. It's the need to have that core value driver framework established. It's the partnership with the C level through to all leadership. You got to get in there with these functional leaders to plant these seeds of this concept. And obviously it benefits everyone. It benefits their core roles, their North Star metrics that they're responsible for. So long as you connect to that, that's all the same. It's how you operate, or how that project or that work starts to build out, that could differ.
And I imagine success kind of hinges on C-suite sponsorship and support of this, right?
For sure. I mean, I get right now, I mean, largely, and I would make this recommendation to anyone who's going to try to go down this path, right? Every C level, CMO, CPO, CTO, CEO, CRO, CF, like to an extent, CFO, like it's a go to market strategy. It's not just value
It's a
consulting
business strategy.
anymore. It's a business strategy. Exactly. And everything hinges on that hub, that value orientation. And that's why I love this job so much. I love doing what I do, because business cases and putting an expected value in front of a customer is great. Like that's where it all started. And now we're here where net retention and expansion opportunity and platform and all the ways in which SaaS products have evolved, it's now putting us in this position. We have to evolve the value programs as well. And that's where value experience is my core objective.
It's the evolution. It's clear, and I love the energy that you bring to it because it's contagious. It makes me want to go and start introducing the value experience in
Please
our own
do.
company.
Yeah, this is, if we, I think if we, I think this is the next way, like this is the next wave. To your point, it's the evolution. And this has been in my head for, close to 5, 6 years now. Like this is, you could see the writing on the wall a long time ago.
For sure. Well, Bhumi, are lucky to have you. A
Thank
couple of
you.
final questions. We always like to ask these questions. These two final questions of everybody that we interview. First one is, who is the best value selling professional you've ever worked with?
The best value selling professional I've ever worked with is a woman by the name of Anne Christelle Graham. She is currently a CRO, I believe, at IDC or Foundry. I can't remember. She is she's probably one of the leaders who taught me the dependencies here, like early sales coaching and whatnot. Kind of, she was that voice in my head, like, wait a second, something's different. I could hear her discovery, the way she worked with customers and prospects. She was phenomenal. She is phenomenal. She's definitely a role model for me.
And equally, who is the best or are some of the best value engineers or value management experts that you've worked with? Could be mentors or colleagues.
Yeah. Probably a woman who fascinated me, who got me really motivated to think differently about this and look at it more as a go to market and global approach was Aditi Chaya. If you're familiar with her, she is a leader at ServiceNow. She and I met long ago in the SAP days. And I just remember sitting across the room, like she had so many great experience experiences and history to draw on. She was one of the early founders or working inside the SAP value work. I was just blown away by her capacity and what she had already accomplished, and I was just on the precipice of turning it into something for myself. So she was a very large motivator for me as well.
Amazing. Marshall, thank you very much. Really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too, Martin. Thank you.